were using marijuana. And a governor conducted that study and determined that the economic cost of incarcerating these individuals did not come close to justifying their incarceration. A governor literally could go over to the phone, pick up the phone, call the head of the Department of Corrections and say, let them out. Okay? Let them out. This is the power of a governor. Or for example, in the area like education, a governor literally has the power to call up the head of the Iowa Department of Education and say, for years we have been using a completely bogus formula. In fact, the formula we've used for graduation and dropouts rarely aligns the two figures. If you look on the State Department of Education's website, under the Department of Education, you'll find graduation rates for a school district like Davenport and dropout rates for Davenport. And the two numbers don't add up. Most people would think, well, you had the percentage of graduates and you had the percentage of dropouts and they come to 100%. In many instances, they don't even come close. In fact, the current state formula for graduation and dropouts is such that we could literally have 100 students start out as freshmen. And 4 years later, 1 graduates, 99 don't graduate, and we have a 100% graduation rate and a 0% dropout rate. So we have to understand that in order to put into perspective the power of a governor. Because a governor can go to the head of the Department of Education and say, you are going to release the raw data on graduation numbers. So we find out that freshmen started out at Davenport North 4 years earlier and 108 graduate. That's going to leave big footprints as it relates to changing the culture of education in this state. Also, the governor clearly controls these state bureaucracies. These department heads serve at the pleasure of the governor. And this is not an insignificant point. He hires them, he fires them. This is the statutory standard. These individuals are not under the authority of a legislator or subject to answer to the Senate or even subject to answer to the taxpayers for that part. They serve at the governor's pleasure. And this is a critical point because it really impacts how we structure state leadership going forward. So I wanted to make that point because, again, we're trying to lay some foundational principles so that when we start showing you how to fix government, we're able to do it with some understanding on your part. So we can just get rid of that chart. Let's go to the state flow chart again, and then we'll go to the whiteboard. There it is. Now can we scroll up some? I'm sorry, the other way. Yeah. We got everything, okay. Now, these folks are under the governor. This is the governor's domain. One of the biggest challenges we face in state government is that during the first major reorganization that we went through in the mid-'80s, power was preserved based upon how much power the advocates for a particular entity had. So regents, for example, had strong advocates. So there was no way regents was going to be brought within proximity to the Department of Education. I remember when they created the Department of Human Rights. And the idea was we would put all the advocacy groups within the Department of Human Rights. And then Elder Affairs was pulled out, and Civil Rights was pulled out, and Veterans Affairs was pulled out. And Governor Branstad made the comment about the White Cane Revolution, how all the blind folks showed up. I didn't say this, he said this, with white canes. And there was no way they were going to bring the blind within the same bureaucracy of anyone else. And so we actually reduced the size of the deck in terms of the number of cards, but the actual size of the deck in terms of the width, the depth, grew. So even though we reduced the number of agencies and bureaucracies, state government continued to grow. What we propose to do, and this is one of the first steps we take, and is to take, for example, and say, commerce, economic development, workforce development, certain aspects of the Department of Inspection and Appeals. Now, we have to understand that in the case of an agency like this, every component wouldn't necessarily go to economic development. Some of the components might go to public safety. The public defender is in the Department of Inspection and Appeals. The public defender might go to the Department of Advocacy, for example. So, the Department of Advocacy. So we look at these. Iowa Finance Authority, for example, would go within a new Department of Economic Development and Commerce. So we fundamentally begin the process of reorganizing state government so that state government makes sense and saves money. Now, I do need the whiteboard for a minute before I go back to the flow chart. I want the whiteboard. Yeah, the clean whiteboard to write on. And can I get a little finer tip in terms of, I saw pen options. Huh? Where? Is this it, the pencil here? Okay. Now, let's take, for example, the departments we would look at creating. Oh. You erased it. Thank you. Does somebody have neat writing? Can you erase that? I'm going to start over again.
Yeah, we did.
Once again, remember, we have a learning curve here. Maybe I'll write them real big. Maybe that'll help.
Actually, John, you gotta press it. There you go. Now you're in.
So we would have a Department of Advocacy. And the Department of Advocacy would take current departments like aging, veterans, human rights, civil rights, and would combine them into one state department. And so this would be the first one of our 9 departments. Can you erase that? Can you do a big white? And see, what we have here, too, is a prime example of I am technically challenged. And our tech people are very patient, and I thank them for that. After that, we have Department of Education. And with the Department of Education, we would take, for example, Regents, College Aid Commission, Cultural Affairs, and the traditional Department of Education, and we would bring them under one department. But here's something else we do. Now, there are 2 kinds of departments within state government. There's the top-down department, where there's clearly a boss and then everybody's subordinate. And then we have a department like Commerce,